All right, so I'm Nick, the owner, brewer, and also janitor, sometimes bartender at Loveland Ale Works. I started this company about 1.5 years ago. We opened July 4th of 2012, and we've been open for, 4 or 5 months now. We brew beer. We make food for yeast. Yeast makes beer for us. That's the biggest thing we need to remember, is that without happy yeast, we're not going to have good beer. We start the brewing process by milling malted barley. And we're basically just trying to crack the kernels open and expose the inside of the grain, the starchy endosperm. So we take this malted barley, it's crushed, and we mix it with hot water. That's called mashing, or mashing in, or doughing in. So we grind up the grain, make a big pot of malted barley and water. It's about the consistency of some thick oatmeal.
Set a big bowl of oatmeal. What's coming out is this hydrated, crushed grain. The white you see is the inside of the barley.
The endosperm.
The endosperm, yeah. That's where all the starches and sugars and such are.
And enzymes.
Yep. It's gonna look and smell a lot different than it did a minute ago, because all that dark peated malt's coming through. That's what's gonna give that black color. This is gonna be a stout.
It almost kind of smells like coffee.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Because those dark malts are roasted in a similar way to the dark coffee. They roast them at a higher temperature to give it that, you know, burnt coffee kind of roasty flavor. And that's what's going to give the roasted flavor in stouts and porters and the dark color.
And then we let it sit for an hour or so. That's called the saccharification rest. What's happening is that enzymes that were developed in the malting process are breaking down big starches into simpler sugars, and lots of different sugars. I'm not even going to try to claim that I know how many different sugars. So after saccharification, we do what's called recirculation, or Verloff, where we strain some wort out of the bottom of the mash tun and pump it back in the top to kind of get all of the solids out, to, you know, all those little pieces of grain that are coming through, to pump them back into the mash tun and get them filtered out.
It's just gravity draining out. There's a little bit of material in the pipe.
Yeah, where's that hose?
That just needs to get broken out. And it'll gravity drain out of here, and then we'll pump it. There's a pipe that goes to the, so I'll get my finger out on the screen there, but there it comes.
No.
There we go.
So there's just a little bit of grain.
Grain is clogging the pipe up. That's why we do this, you know, because we don't want all that grain in the kettle. Woo!
So there's a pipe that goes under the deck here and to the pump on the manifold. And it's going to go, and then it's going to go into the pump back there, and then back out this hose, and it's going to come right back into our mash tun.
Okay.
And that's that recirculation process. Like I said, it's going to do two things. It's going to make a filter bed, which will filter out all that grain material, which we don't want in the kettle. And so we'll get a nice good mash filter bed, and then it'll smooth running later.
So we're draining off by gravity the sweet wort into this, which is called the grant. And we're waiting till all the particles of grain and such quit coming out of the bottom of the mash tun. Say, hey, you know, we got a good filter bed set up, and you're going to get nice, clean, clear wort. If you get too much grain, yeah, look at all that grain in there. If you get too much grain in your boil, then you can extract tannins, which taste astringent, bitter, not good beer, or good eats, as Alton Brown would say. Trying to get all that crud out of there. Okay, we're looking pretty good. Nice. See how there's not a lot of grain in it now? I'll do that. Once we've got clean wort coming out of the mash, we start what's called our runoff and sparging, or watering.
On top of the grain bed, but you don't want it dry. You want to keep an inch of a layer of water kind of floating on the top, and evenly rinsing the grain. That way you can get all that grain extraction.
So that's the first part of wort production, is milling the grain, mashing in, recirculating it, and then running it off into our boil kettle. So I'm gonna take a sip. We've mashed, we've got sweet liquid coming out of the mash tun. It's called wort, W-O-R-T. Some brewers say wort, some say wort. You know, tomato, whatever. I mispronounce things all the time. So we strain our sweet wort out of the mash, pump it into our brew kettle, and start adding heat. We got a big flame under our brew kettle, and it, you know, it takes about an hour to get up to a boil, about an hour and a half to run the wort off from the mash tun. The whole time we're taking sweet wort out of the mash tun, we're replacing hot water in the top. That's called sparging or lautering. And the whole idea is we don't want all of the grain to compress and get all dense, and then water can't get through it. You can't rinse your sugars out, and it makes for angry brewers. So we strain our wort and we bring it up to a boil. Once it's boiling, we go through a process called, as it's coming up to a boil, there's all the enzymes that converted our sugars start to become denatured in the boil, and they, you know, just like cooking an egg or meringue or whatever, they float to the top, and it's this dense kind of foam, cruddy looking stuff, and that's called hot break. And so as we come up to a boil, that happens, and it's usually real exciting trying to keep the kettle from boiling over and whatnot. Once we get to a happy, steady, rolling boil, we add hops. Hops are a plant. They are little leafy looking pine cone things that have a resin inside of them called lupulin. That's what makes beer bitter or floral or grassy or citrusy, usually. So we boil hops. You know, typically we throw hops anywhere from 2 to 12 times during the boil. The batch we made is Imperial Stout, so I think we had 3 or 4 hop throws. It's really not a hoppy beer. We add hops to that beer just to kind of balance the sweetness and the alcohol. So this bucket of sugar will add about 1.5% alcohol. And it should be mostly fermentable. Maybe up in the 90% something fermentable.
That's why it's so sweet.
Maybe we should try and dump it in.
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, we add hops, we boil it, and then comes knockout and whirlpool. So knockout is just turning the flame off, and what we do in whirlpooling is we get all of the liquid in the kettle to spin up into a nice big vortex ideally. Ours doesn't spin all that fast or violently, so it kind of just barely sets all the solids in the middle. What you do is you run the pump for 15 minutes and then we turn it off and let everything slow down, and then it just leaves a nice cone of all of the hops and hot break and other stuff. We call it trub or trube or whatever, the whole pronunciation thing, I don't know. And at that point we've got this, 360 gallon kettle of boiling hot wort, and we need to send it down to a fermenter and put yeast into it. Yeast don't like 200 degrees, so we run it through a heat exchanger, cool it off to about 70, 75 degrees. We add oxygen to the wort stream, and then it goes to a fermenter, which you see right behind me.